My magazine uses, develops and challenges the forms and conventions of real music magazines in several ways. Firstly, my front cover challenges the convention to use stereotypical cover lines to provide extra information to the reader as to what is in the magazine. For example, in Q, Fights, Feuds and Feathers gives information about the Kings of Leon story and hints to the reader that there is a problem within the band. My magazine almost completely opposes this due to the large amount of empty space on the page. I believe instead of cover lines, I have developed an idea seen on the front cover of The Fly by making my what would be cover lines just artist names. The Fly have done this with Zulu Winter, Lucy Rose, Django Django, Tribes and Howler. I believe this adds to what my magazine is, keeping the cover clean and concise, adding to the minimalist approach I was aiming for. I challenge the use of cover lines because the minimal look my front cover has would, for one, make it strikingly different on the shelves of a shop, and make it more visually appealing for my readership. Additionally, the house colour scheme I have chosen challenges the conventional and traditional red, white and black colours of a lot of indie magazines, two being Enemy and Q. Instead of this popular set of colours, I have opted for light blue, black and white. Whilst I appreciate the classy red, white and black colours, house colours of Q and Enemy, I think that sometimes those colours are somewhat in your face and overly striking for the reader to engage with. Instead, the house colours I have chosen are calm and subtle, making it unconventional from the rest of indie music magazines that have more outlandish colours, like the red of Enemy and Q. And I believe this unconventional colour scheme would make it a salient magazine on the shelf of a shop, and because of its differing approach, I think it would catch the eye of a potential reader. Also, the mix of capital and lowercase letters in my masthead show an unconventionality that would not be done in any other magazine. For example, all of the magazines that I analyse for my textual analysis, Q, Enemy and The Fly, use solid sets of uppercase letters for their masthead. My magazine differs in this aspect, and I think it adds to the unconventional style my magazine carries and makes the masthead memorable, creating a sort of brand that people will recognise because of its differing style and lettering. Also, the main image on my front cover follows conventions in the sense that it is a close-up, showing the artist's facial emotion. I think the fact that Bloom looks, in a certain sense, plain is unconventional though, as there is usually something that draws attention to the cover artist. A prop, for instance, like Lana Del Rey on the cover of Q, who has a tiara on. But I think that the fact that Bloom is unadorned with jewellery or props makes her different to others. For my contents page, I went against the conventional layout seen in Q and Enemy, where the contents information is all down one side in one big column, and instead chose the multiple column structure seen in The Fly. This way of laying out my content stories fits in with the minimalistic look of my magazine, as it is just made of the names of the artists featured, or the name of the feature in the magazine. These link to the images on the page, which I think carry the conventions of the indie genre. All artists are memorable. One artist is holding a guitar which is synonymous with Indian folk music, and is featured in a long shot to show his whole costume, which is vintage and stylish, which are also synonymous to the indie genre. Others have memorable shirts or hair and are featured in medium shots or medium close-ups to show their interesting costume, the homey/natural surroundings, or almost unforgettable hair. These images are accompanied with conventional numbers to navigate the reader from the contents to the article that features that artist. For these numbers I have chosen the same font from the banner on the front page, creating a familiar house style for the reader, as well as making navigation from the front cover to the contents page and then to the main article within the magazine easy. Additionally, the lack of captions I have used on the images challenges that of Q and Enemy. I haven't included captions on my original images because I believe my readers would already have a relationship with the artists, and so would know who the artists are without little boxes explaining it. My double-page spread echoes the layout from the Q article with Lana Del Rey. I have used this because of the unconventional layout and image, which I mentioned in my textual analysis. The image of my main artist Bloom that I have used differs from the Lana Del Rey image in several important ways. For one, Lana Del Rey belongs firmly in the realms of pop, so is dressed extravagantly, and Bloom is a folk artist that wears comfy vintage. Although the bouquet of roses Bloom is holding can be read into as much as the blood running down Del Rey's face, it could be said the mix of white and red is a mix in personalities between us two. This deep-lying meaning could be said to go one-in-one with indie music, which is most often touching and heartfelt. With the two-column layout used goes against stereotypical music magazine article layout. They're usually set in 2 or 3 equally sized columns. We see this in Enemy, where the columns are evenly sized. The huge drop capital is also unconventional in the sense that it leaves a lot of empty space. This adds to the minimalist mantra of my magazine. Additionally, I think the wordy paragraph on my double-page spread shows how important the written word is to the magazine. I think that it perfectly sums up what my finished product is about, the unconventional aesthetics of the magazine's layout and images, and the way the words that make up the magazine are written. My music magazine represents the indie genre through its images. The representation of my artist differs significantly from other genres like hip-hop or R&B. For instance, my male artists are shown to be fashionable and somewhat sensitive-looking, posing with a subtle, sweet smile to the camera. This contrasts strongly with that of the Source, who represent their male artists as rich, pictured with bling, and mostly womanizing. For example, this front cover of the Source pictures Ice Cube with a large cigar and gold teeth. He's represented as a stereotypical gangster. My model Martin is shown with a guitar next to him in a very homely setting. As well as setting him apart from more well-known artists, it indicates what genre of music he belongs to, as indie artists are mainly associated with playing live instruments and strongly connected with guitars in particular. The representation of the artist Bloom throughout my magazine goes along with the usual representation of women in this genre, strong, independent and non-sexualized. Again, this differs from that of more mainstream artists like Cheryl Cole. She is pictured in Q wearing a fairly revealing top as well as tights with rips in them, in a very constructed pose. She's been made to look sexualized. Whereas the artist Bloom is pictured with normal, comfortable clothes on and stands in an ordinary position, connoting that she is allowed to be herself, rather than being moved into strange positions like a puppet. The magazines I have looked at are all created by media groups. Q, for instance, is published and distributed by Bauer Media Group, a media conglomerate, whilst The Fly is published by a subsidiary of the HMV Group, Mama Group. I would consider both companies, as both have positives. Bauer Media Group would interest me because of their experience in the genre, through that of Q. However, the way The Fly is distributed and published by Mama Group to customers may be a way to get my magazine to the more niche audience I am looking for. The Fly is a free magazine given out in certain pubs or specialty shops like vintage stores, but is also available to read online. This interests me because of the large amount of time the age group I'm looking to aim my magazine at would spend online. Like The Fly and other magazines like Vice, my magazine could raise finance through sponsorship and advertising both within the magazine and on the website. I also think this way of distribution fits my more liberal magazine style, and it would be a way to distribute the magazine to a larger audience than it may have done with the large price tag. I would target an audience of ages between 16 and 35. I think these ages and that between are when people are most interested and willing to listen to new music, and so my magazine could inform them on artists they don't already know, as well as entertain them with articles on and interviews with artists they already know. To go with this, my magazine could take advantage of the current importance of social networking sites and create a page on Facebook or Twitter, for instance, and post updates on what the magazine has in it in future months, and possibly post songs that correlate with this contents of the magazine to raise interest about what is in it. Also, I think my magazine would have a share of female and male audience members, because indie as a genre doesn't really exclude any particular gender, and attitudes towards both genders are equal when compared, as I did previously, with that of R&B or hip-hop. Furthermore, I think that both genders can relate to my magazine, as I have a share of male and female artists included in it. The nationality of my readers, I believe, would mainly be British, as most indie artists are British, and not so many people outside of the country would actually know of the artists. This singular target country would help to create a relationship between the reader and the magazine, as British people would be the only ones reading the magazine and have a large interest in indie music. And so, a magazine like mine targeted directly at the artist they love would automatically create a connection between reader and publication. The price of a magazine holds importance, as it's relatively expensive. Even though of its relatively high price, I believe that the C1 and C2 class brackets would have the required disposable income to be able to afford the $4.99 for the magazine, and as well, people within these brackets would be able to relate to the indie genre because of the reality and the routine of the life they would lead. Although, I do think that my magazine requires a certain level of intelligence and prior knowledge to access it. The writing is very descriptive and complex, which challenges the readership in a sense. I think my main audience would indulge in the fact that my magazine features little-known artists that only they may know, which makes them feel individual and included in some sort of exclusive club. My magazine attracts the audience we target through house style and the colours used in my house colour scheme. I believe my use of fonts and colours are very aesthetically pleasing as well as being unique. For example, my masthead uses a mix of capital and lowercase letters, which usually would look strange, but in the serif font I have used looks unconventionally sophisticated. Also, the calm mix of light blue, black and white I have used makes the magazine easy to look at as a whole. The whole experience of viewing it feels less intense than it would have if I had chosen a more in-your-face colour scheme. Also, the images I have used for my magazine would attract the target readership because, as well as being well taken and looking professional, they represent the indie genre through mise-en-scène. For example, the guitar my model Martin holds is synonymous to the indie genre, as well as the practical, non-glamorous clothes worn by Bloom. It gives something for the audience to relate to, makes them feel they can be famous without having to have a crazy style that costs them thousands of pounds. Another aspect of my magazine that makes it attract our target audience is the fact it's a niche publication, meaning that it's completely individual with no rivalry in layout or representation. This would make the audience feel included in a secret club that only they belong to. I feel they would get satisfaction in the sense that the magazine features artists that aren't that well known, and so only they may know of them, giving them the ability to take some sort of musical moral high ground. My magazine addresses the target audience through the language used within it. For example, the main example of body text in my 3 pages is the double-page spread article, which uses a lot of formal language. I have done this to show the artistry of good wording, to match with the artistry of the good layout and presentation of my magazine as a whole. Although I have used colloquialisms in my article in the form of taboo language, which shows a sort of consolation with the reader, we feel comfortable enough with them to use socially prohibited language as we have. Additionally, I think the audience I have targeted would use taboo language quite often, as people of a working class are shown to swear more, whether out of stress or just because they can. So in this, the coarse language shows that we relate to our audience. Throughout the course of constructing my magazine, I have learnt about several different technologies. First, I learnt how to proportion rulers on Photoshop, which makes sure that the spacing of the gutters on a page are all the same size. Also, I learnt how to write a text inside a shape, for example, the banner on my front cover. Additionally, I learnt how to crop down photos, which help my layout and help me proportion space appealingly around my pages. Additionally, I learnt how to create an account and profile on WordPress.com. Through this, I learnt about digital storage and how to create a new post and save it as a draft on WordPress, as well as how to insert images into a post and then post it onto the blog for viewing by the public.